The ocean is restless tonight. Moonlight fractures across dark water as a wooden ship creaks under the weight of human cargo. Below deck, in air thick with salt, sweat, and despair, iron bites into flesh. A mother whispers a name into her child's ear, perhaps for the last time. The year is not marked in their minds by numbers, but by rupture. How does a people endure the unendurable and still shape a nation that once denied their humanity? This is not only a story of suffering. It is a chronicle of survival, resistance, creation, and transformation. This is the complete history of Black Americans.
Long before the first chains rattled in the Atlantic world, Africa was not a monolith of villages waiting for conquest. It was a vast continent of empires, kingdoms, and city-states, Mali and Songhai, Benin and Congo, connected by trade routes, scholarship, and sophisticated political systems. Timbuktu's libraries housed thousands of manuscripts. Artisans cast bronze with breathtaking precision. Farmers cultivated rice, cotton, and indigo, knowledge that would later reshape the Americas. The rise of European maritime empires in the 15th century altered this world irrevocably. Portuguese traders arrived first, followed by Spanish, Dutch, French, and English powers. What began as limited trade in gold and goods metastasized into something far darker, the transatlantic slave trade. Over 4 centuries, more than 12 million Africans would be forcibly taken. Nearly 2 million would die before ever reaching shore. This was not an accident of history. It was an economic engine. Sugar, tobacco, rice, and later cotton demanded labor at a scale Europe could not supply. Racial ideology followed profit, not the other way around, constructed to justify bondage and transform human beings into property. The camera descends into the hold of a slave ship. Bodies are stacked like cargo, chained wrist to ankle. Disease spreads quickly, dysentery, smallpox, despair. Resistance is constant, hunger strikes, uprisings, leaps into the sea. Survival itself becomes an act of defiance. By the early 17th century, Africans arrive in English North America. In 1619, a ship docks in Virginia carrying 20 and odd Negroes. At first, the lines between indentured servitude and slavery are blurred. But by the late 1600s, colonial law hardens. Lifetime slavery becomes hereditary. Blackness becomes synonymous with enslavement. Plantations rise across the Chesapeake and the Lowcountry. Enslaved Africans bring skills their captors rely on: rice cultivation in South Carolina, cattle herding in Texas, ironworking, carpentry, and medicine. They build the wealth of the colonies brick by brick, field by field. Yet within bondage, a culture is born. African rhythms merge with Christian hymns, forming spirituals, songs of sorrow layered with coded hope. Families form under constant threat of separation. Names, stories, and fragments of language are preserved like embers, carried forward against the wind. The late 18th century brings rebellion. American colonists rise against British rule, proclaiming liberty and natural rights. But for nearly 1/5 of the population, enslaved Africans, freedom is conspicuously absent. Black Americans navigate this contradiction with clarity. Thousands flee to British lines after being promised freedom in exchange for service. Others fight for the Continental Army, believing revolution might open the door to emancipation. Figures like Crispus Attucks, killed in the Boston Massacre, become early martyrs of American independence. After the war, slavery ends in the North, but expands in the South. The invention of the cotton gin in 1793 transforms cotton into king, entrenching slavery deeper than ever before. By 1860, nearly 4 million people are enslaved in the United States. Still, resistance persists. Enslaved people sabotage tools, slow labor, preserve forbidden education, and escape via networks later known as the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman, herself once enslaved, returns south again and again, armed, resolute, and unafraid, leading dozens to freedom. "I never ran my train off the track," she would later say, and I never lost a passenger. The nation fractures under the weight of its own contradictions. In 1861, war erupts. At first, the conflict is framed as a fight to preserve the Union. But enslaved people force the issue. By fleeing plantations and seeking refuge behind Union lines, they turn the war into a referendum on slavery itself. President Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, a war measure that redefines the struggle. Black men enlist by the hundreds of thousands. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry charges Fort Wagner under withering fire, proving courage where critics predicted collapse. When the war ends in 1865, slavery is legally abolished. Freedom, long imagined, is now written into law. But the question looms, what does freedom mean? In the war's aftermath, Black Americans step into citizenship with urgency. They build schools, churches, and newspapers. Men vote, hold office, and help rewrite state constitutions. For a brief moment, the United States becomes a multiracial democracy. But this moment is fragile. White supremacist violence erupts across the South, lynchings, night riders, and terror campaigns led by groups like the Ku Klux Klan. Federal commitment wanes. In 1877, Reconstruction effectively ends. Troops withdraw. Protections vanish. Jim Crow rises. Jim Crow and the Long Night. Segregation becomes law. Separate but equal is enshrined by the Supreme Court, though equality is a fiction. Black Americans are pushed into underfunded schools, disenfranchised through poll taxes and literacy tests, and subjected to constant threat of violence. Lynching becomes a public ritual, thousands murdered with impunity. Ida B. Wells, journalist and anti-lynching crusader, documents these crimes with fearless precision, exposing the lie that they are about justice rather than control. Yet even in this long night, Black life flourishes in defiance. The Great Migration begins. Millions leave the rural South for northern and western cities, Chicago, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, seeking safety and opportunity. In Harlem, a cultural explosion ignites. Writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, musicians like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong, redefine American art. Jazz becomes the sound of freedom, improvised, resilient, unapologetically Black. World wars and rising demands. Black Americans fight in both world wars, wearing the uniform of a country that still denies them full rights. They return with sharpened expectations. The contradiction grows unbearable. After World War II, momentum accelerates. Legal challenges dismantle segregation piece by piece. In 1954, Brown v. Board of Education declares segregated schools unconstitutional. Then comes the movement. The Civil Rights Era. The camera follows a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. In 1955, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat. It is a small act with seismic consequences. A young pastor named Martin Luther King Jr. emerges, preaching nonviolence with moral force. Marches fill the streets. Children face fire hoses. Protesters endure beatings and jail cells. The nation watches as brutality is broadcast into living rooms. There are other voices too, Malcolm X, calling for self-defense and global Black solidarity. The movement is not monolithic, it is a chorus, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in tension. Landmark laws follow: the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Legal apartheid falls. But victories come at great cost. Leaders are assassinated. Cities erupt in grief and rage. The struggle evolves. The late 20th century brings new challenges. Deindustrialization strips jobs from urban centers. The war on drugs fuels mass incarceration, disproportionately impacting Black communities. Redlining and discriminatory policy entrench wealth gaps. Yet Black Americans continue to shape the nation's culture and conscience, through music, sports, scholarship, politics, and protest. From hip-hop to the presidency of Barack Obama, influence is undeniable, even as inequality persists. In the 21st century, names echo: Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, sparking a new generation of activism. The language evolves, but the demand remains ancient and urgent: dignity, safety, equality. The history of Black Americans is not a sidebar to American history. It is the central thread. From forced migration to cultural renaissance, from bondage to ballad, Black Americans have continually expanded the meaning of freedom, often for everyone. The nation's wealth, music, language, and democratic ideals bear their imprint. This story matters because it is unfinished. The past is not past, it lives in institutions, landscapes, and memories. To understand America, one must reckon with this history in full, its cruelty, its courage, its contradictions. The camera returns to the ocean, now calm. The descendants of those once chained stand on its shores: artists, soldiers, teachers, dreamers. The journey has been long. The struggle continues. And the story, still being written, demands to be remembered.